On my 30th birthday, I saw on Instagram that my family surprised my sister with a trip to Paris. My mom commented, "She's the only one who makes us proud." I smiled, logged into the bank account, and clicked withdraw. I was sitting in a ramen bar in downtown Seattle, watching the rain streak against the glass. My bowl was untouched. My 30th birthday. No calls, no texts, just a notification. I opened it. There was Courtney, my younger sister, posing in front of the Eiffel Tower, holding a glass of champagne. Then came the second notification from my banking app, a pending transaction for $15,000. Labeled brand launch. I stared at the screen. My reaction wasn't emotional, it was administrative. I just unlocked my phone and logged in. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. Most people would have panicked. Most people would have dialed their mother to ask if there had been a mistake. But I didn't work in a department that dealt with feelings. I dealt with systems. To anyone watching me in that ramen bar, I probably looked like I was checking emails or doom scrolling, but inside the digital infrastructure of my life, I was building a guillotine. The first step wasn't the withdrawal, it was the evidence. I knew my parents, if I just took the money, they would gaslight me. They would claim I was stealing, that I was crazy, that the money was never mine to begin with. So I needed receipts. I tapped the export feature on the banking app, download transaction history. I selected all time. A few seconds later, a CSV file landed in my downloads folder. I opened it immediately. My thumb, scrolling through 6 years of my life, converted into data points. It was nauseatingly illuminated by the cold blue light of my screen. Every deposit I'd made, $650 every single month, like clockwork, was there. But so were the withdrawals. I saw charges for medical expenses that coincided perfectly with the dates of my mom's laser eye surgery, which she'd told me was covered by insurance. I saw withdrawals for pharmacy that matched the price of the designer handbags Courtney had flaunted last Christmas, and then the fresh wounds, the $15,000 pending charge for Parisian brand launch package. They hadn't just dipped into the fund. They had been treating my savings like a personal slush fund for years. The emergency account was actually the lifestyle maintenance account. I closed the file and went back to the main dashboard. $47,000. That was what was left. That was the money I had eaten instant noodles to save. That was the down payment on a house I hadn't bought because I was too busy protecting my parents from a financial ruin that didn't exist. I tapped transfer. Source, Joint Family Emergency Fund. Destination, Stephanie Personal High Yield Savings. Amount all available funds. The app asked me to confirm. This will empty the account. Are you sure? The screen glared back at me with the yes button. In that split second, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel the crushing weight of familial obligation that had kept me in line for 3 decades. I felt light. I felt the precise, cold clarity of a surgeon cutting out a tumor. I tapped yes. Processing, transfer complete. The balance on the joint account dropped to 0. A perfect hollow 0. I didn't stop there. I knew the notification would hit my mom's phone in seconds. The screaming phone calls would start in less than a minute. I opened my contacts. Mom block caller, dad block caller, Courtney block caller. Then I went to Instagram, block. Facebook, block. Email, filter to trash. By the time the waitress came over to ask if I wanted my ramen reheated, I had effectively erased my family from my digital existence. The silence that followed wasn't lonely. It was heavy and protective, like a lead blanket. "No thanks," I told the waitress, placing a $20 bill on the table. "I've lost my appetite." I walked out into the Seattle rain, the gray sky matching the concrete under my boots. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a voicemail notification from a restricted number. They were already panicking. I didn't listen to it. I didn't check it. I just pulled my coat tighter and walked toward the train station. The bank was closed. And for the first time in 30 years, the vault was locked from the inside. To understand why I pressed that button without a tremor in my hand, You have to understand the economics of my family. It started 6 years ago. My dad had a minor heart scare, angina, stress induced. He sat me down at the kitchen table, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, and showed me the bills. They were drowning. They had no savings, terrible insurance, and a lifestyle they refused to downgrade. I was 24, fresh into my first real data job. I wanted to be the hero, so I set up the arrangement. $650 a month. Automatic transfer. It was pitched as a family emergency fund, a shield against the next health scare, a buffer against foreclosure. For 72 months, I honored that contract. Do you know what $650 a month looks like? For me, it looked like a studio apartment with a radiator that hissed all night. It looked like driving a 12-year-old sedan that rattled on the highway. It looked like declining invitations to friends' weddings because I couldn't afford the flight. It looked like eating clearance aisle food while scrolling through pictures of my parents dining at steakhouses. I told myself it was noble. I told myself I was the responsible one. But there is a specific psychological term for children like me, the glass child. We are transparent. Our parents look right through us to see the sibling who has the issues, the talent, or the needs. We aren't seen, we are looked through. We are the structural beams of the house essential to keep the roof from collapsing, but completely covered up by drywall and paint so no one has to look at us. Courtney was the paint. While I was funding the emergency account, Courtney was pursuing her career. First, it was acting, then modeling, then lifestyle influencing. My parents didn't ask her for rent. They didn't ask her for contributions. They bought her professional cameras. They leased her a white BMW because it fit the aesthetic. They paid for her networking trips to Cabo and Miami. I used to wonder why they never thanked me. I used to wait for a birthday card that said, "Thank you for keeping the lights on, Stephanie." But you don't thank the foundation for holding up the house. You assume it's there. You only notice the foundation when it cracks. And that morning, seeing Courtney in Paris, I finally realized the nature of the transaction. I wasn't paying for my father's heart medication. I wasn't saving them from destitution. I was the venture capitalist for Courtney's delusions. My $650 a month wasn't buying safety. It was buying Courtney's engagement metrics. It was subsidizing the lie that my parents were successful, wealthy patrons of the arts rather than people living paycheck to paycheck on their eldest daughter's charity. I looked at the rain falling on the Seattle pavement. I thought about the spreadsheet I kept on my laptop, the ledger of sacrifices, I jokingly called it. The joke was over. I wasn't the foundation anymore. I was the demolition crew. The silence I had manufactured lasted exactly 42 minutes. That was the time it took for the reality of a zero-balance debit card to hit a boutique on the Champs-Élysées. My phone was quiet because of the blocks, but my email inbox began to ping. I had filtered my parents' addresses to a folder I named litigation, but the notifications bypassed my peace of mind. Subject: urgent. Call immediately. Subject: your sister is crying. Subject: bank error. Then the tone shifted. When they realized it wasn't a bank error, but a deliberate extraction, the subject lines turned venomous. Subject: you are ruining everything. I sat on a park bench under the awning of a coffee shop, opened my laptop, and clicked on the most recent email from my mother. It was a masterclass in narcissistic injury. Stephanie, I don't know what kind of sick game you are playing, but Courtney is humiliated. Her card declined in front of her photographer. We are stranded. That money was for the family. You had no right to touch it. Put it back immediately, or God help me, you will regret it. We are your parents. How can you be so selfish? Selfish. The word hung on the screen, glowing in black pixels. For years, that word had been their favorite weapon. If I didn't want to drive 3 hours to fix their printer, selfish. If I didn't want to co-sign a loan for Courtney, selfish. I used to believe them. I used to read these emails and feel a spike of adrenaline and guilt, my fingers twitching to fix it, to smooth it over, to pay the toll so they would love me again. But this time, reading the email felt like reading a spam message from a Nigerian prince. I saw the mechanics of the scam. There is a concept in psychology and gambling called the gambler's fallacy. It is the belief that if an event has happened more frequently than normal during the past, it is less likely to happen in the future. Or conversely, if you have lost again and again, you are due for a win. For 6 years, I had been standing at the slot machine of my parents' affection. I kept feeding it coins, $650 at a time. Every time I pulled the lever and got nothing, no praise, no love, no respect, I told myself, the jackpot is coming. Next month, next payment, next crisis. I thought that if I just invested enough, eventually the machine would have to pay out. Reading my mother's demand for more money while she was in Paris on my dime, I finally understood the truth. The machine wasn't broken. It wasn't cold. It was rigged. It was programmed never to pay out. The house always wins. The only way to win was to walk out of the casino. I didn't reply to the email. I didn't wire the money back so Courtney could buy her way out of embarrassment. I simply right-clicked on the email and selected Mark as read. Then I opened a new tab. I needed to know exactly what I had been paying for. I needed to see the machine from the inside. I didn't bring my feelings to work the next morning. I brought my laptop and the CSV files. My office in the cybersecurity district was a fortress of glass and steel, a stark contrast to the chaotic, emotional landscape of my family. Here, facts were currency. Ambiguity was a security risk. I booked a conference room and pulled in Jessica, a senior analyst who had mentored me for 3 years. Jessica didn't do hugs. She didn't do there. She did forensic audits. Show me the data, she said, plugging my laptop into the main monitor. The spreadsheet filled the wall-sized screen. We weren't looking at family betrayal anymore. We were looking at embezzlement. We treated my parents' joint account like a compromised server. Okay, Jessica said, her laser pointer dancing over a series of recurring transactions. Let's isolate the outflows. You've got the obvious luxury spend boutiques, airlines, restaurants. But look at this. She circled a recurring charge. $2,000 every single month, paid to Global Reach Digital Solutions. Marketing? I asked. Courtney always said she had a PR team. Let's verify, Jessica said. She opened a terminal window and ran a background check on the merchant. It wasn't a PR firm on Madison Avenue. It was a shell company registered in a tax haven hosting a server farm known for one thing: automated social engagement. Bots, Jessica said flatly. They're buying bots, Stephanie. My stomach turned over. What? Look at the timestamps. Jessica overlaid the transaction dates with a graph of Courtney's Instagram growth. It was a perfect match. January 1st, I deposit $650. January 3rd, parents pay Global Reach $2,000. January 4th, Courtney gains 5,000 new followers. It wasn't a career, it was a Ponzi scheme of social status. My parents were taking my hard-earned money I made, analyzing real data, and using it to purchase a fake reality for my sister. They were buying her likes, buying her comments, buying the illusion that she was a rising star so they could brag to their friends about their famous daughter, while the daughter who actually paid for the electricity was treated like a servant. She's not an influencer, I whispered, the realization hitting me colder than the rain outside. She's a fraud, and I'm the venture capital firm funding a bankrupt startup. Jessica turned off the monitor. The room went dim. This changes the classification, she said. This isn't just a family dispute. If they solicited money from you under the pretense of medical emergencies and used it to commit consumer fraud, that's actionable. She looked at me. What do you want to do? Do you want to call them? I looked at the black screen. I thought about the medical bills my dad had cried over. I thought about Courtney's smug face in Paris, basking in adoration from 50,000 robots. No, I said. I don't want to call them. I want to collect. I opened a Word document. I didn't write Dear Mom and Dad. I typed the header in bold, centered text, notice of default and demand for repayment. I'm drafting a formal demand letter, I told Jessica. I'm treating the last 6 years of contributions not as a gift, but as an unauthorized loan obtained through misrepresentation. I'm giving them 30 days to restructure their debt before I pursue legal recovery. Jessica smiled a sharp, terrifying smile. Now you're speaking my language. Do you want the template for unjust enrichment? Yes, I said. I think I do. I typed. The keys clattered like gunfire in the quiet room. This wasn't revenge. It was a correction. The market was finally adjusting. They were waiting for me in the lobby of my apartment building. My doorman, a retired Marine named Earl, who liked me because I tipped well at Christmas, had called up to let me know. 3 individuals, he said. They say they're family. They don't look happy. I told him to keep them there. I didn't invite them up. You don't invite hostile parties into the vault. You meet them in neutral territory. When the elevator doors slid open, the visual contrast was almost comical. I was wearing my navy blazer, holding my leather portfolio, fresh from a 10-hour shift of hunting cyber threats. They looked like refugees from a luxury disaster. My mother's blowout was frizzy from humidity. My father was wearing a wrinkled linen suit. Courtney was hiding behind oversized sunglasses, tapping furiously on a phone that I knew wasn't loading any new likes. They spotted me and surged forward. The formation was familiar: Mom as the battering ram, Dad as the negotiator, Courtney as the victim. Stephanie! My mother's voice echoed off the marble floors. Do you have any idea what you've done? We had to fly economy. Economy! And Courtney missed her meeting with the agency because we couldn't pay the driver. You stranded us like animals. I didn't step back. I walked to the low glass table in the center of the seating area and set my portfolio down. I didn't strand you, I said, my voice leveled to a boardroom volume. I simply revoked unauthorized access to my capital. Capital? My father stepped in, trying to look authoritative despite the sweat stains on his collar. Stephanie, honey, let's not use big words. We're family. We made a mistake with the accounts, sure. But you can't just steal $47,000 from us. It wasn't stealing, Dad, I said. It was a clawback. I unzipped the portfolio and slid the spreadsheet across the glass. It wasn't just the numbers. It was the graph Jessica and I had made, the one overlaying my deposits with Courtney's fake follower growth. I know about Global Reach Digital Solutions, I said. The air left the room instantly. Courtney stopped tapping on her phone. She looked up, her face pale beneath the bronzer. I know you aren't paying a PR firm, I continued, looking directly at my sister. I know you're buying bots. I know that 70% of your engagement comes from a server farm in a tax haven. And I know that my emergency fund was the only thing keeping your engagement rate above 0. My mother sputtered. That's an investment strategy. You don't understand the industry. I understand fraud, I said. And I understand that if I release this audit to the brands you're currently trying to court, your career is over. You won't just be broke, Courtney. You'll be a laughingstock. Courtney shrank back into the sofa. She knew I had the nuclear codes. My father tried one last pivot. He sat down heavily, putting on his disappointed patriarch face. Stephanie, look, we know we prioritized Courtney's career. Maybe we went too far, but we did it because she needed the help. You've always been the strong one, the successful one. We're proud of you. I held up a hand. Stop. We are, he insisted. We're proud of everything you do. Okay, I said. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. Name one thing. My father blinked. What? Name one thing about me that you are proud of. But here are the rules. You cannot mention my job title. You cannot mention my salary. You cannot mention my ability to pay for things. Name one specific thing about my personality, my hobbies, or my life that makes you proud. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at my mother. She looked away, staring at a potted plant. They racked their brains. I could see the gears grinding. They knew my job title because it sounded impressive to their friends. They knew my salary because they spent it. But they didn't know me. They didn't know I volunteered at the animal shelter on Sundays. They didn't know I loved restoring vintage watches. They didn't know I had just completed a marathon. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Courtney looked at me, and for the first time, there was no malice in her eyes, just pity. She knew they couldn't do it. That's what I thought, I said softly. I picked up my portfolio. The shareholders meeting is adjourned. The bank is closed. Do not contact me again, or I will release the bot data to the public. I turned my back on them. My mother started to shout something, probably an insult, probably an excuse, but I didn't hear it. I was already walking toward the elevator, leaving the bad investment behind in the lobby. The liquidation of my family assets took exactly 3 weeks to finalize. That was how long it took me to find a new apartment in a building with biometric security and a doorman who didn't know my last name. I didn't flee. I relocated. It was a strategic restructuring of my personal environment. My career trajectory accelerated the moment I cut the dead weight. Without the mental bandwidth consumed by my mother's crises or Courtney's manufactured dramas, my focus sharpened. I accepted a promotion to the cybersecurity division the following month. The job required high-level clearance and a background check that dug into every corner of my life. When the investigator asked about my family, I told him the truth. I have no contact with them. They are a security risk I have mitigated. He didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with respect. In my line of work, sentimentality is a vulnerability. Ruthlessness is an asset. As for the shareholders, the market corrected them too. I never released the bot farm data. I didn't have to. The threat was enough to enforce a permanent ceasefire. Without my capital injection, the brand of Courtney collapsed under its own overhead. My parents sold their house, the one they had over-leveraged to impress neighbors they didn't like, and downsized to a 2-bedroom condo in the suburbs. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Courtney was working as a receptionist at a dental office. No more Paris, no more champagne, just the dull, grinding reality of earning a wage dollar by hour. It wasn't justice, it was just math. You can't spend what you don't have. But victory, I learned, isn't a parade, it's quiet. For the first few months, the silence in my new apartment felt heavy. There is a specific, complex pain that comes with going no contact. It is grieving without a body. When someone dies, you get a funeral. You get closure. People bring you casseroles and tell you it will get better. But when you cut off living family, you get nothing but questions. You mourn people who are still walking around, still breathing, still updating their Facebook statuses with passive-aggressive quotes about loyalty. I realized I wasn't grieving Melissa, David, and Courtney. I was grieving the parents I had invented in my head to survive my childhood. I was mourning the hope that one day they would wake up and see me. I had to bury that hope. I had to shovel dirt over the idea that if I just achieved enough, paid enough, or fixed enough, I would finally be worthy of the investment. That version of me is dead. The woman who remains is debt-free. I sat on my balcony this morning, watching the Seattle rain wash the city gray. It was cold, but I didn't feel it. I checked my bank account. The balance was healthy. The transfer logs were boring. No emergencies, no drama, just slow, steady compound interest. I sipped my coffee and watched the numbers. They say money can't buy happiness, and maybe that's true, but it can buy freedom. It can buy a lock on the door that only you can open, and it can buy the peace of mind to sit in the rain, knowing that for the first time in your life, you aren't paying for someone else's sunshine. If you've ever had to be the parent to your own parents, or if you've had to walk away to save yourself, share your story in the comments. You aren't alone. Don't forget to follow for more stories about breaking the cycle.